The modern bitterness between Argentina and France centers on one match, the 2022 World Cup final at Lusail, where Argentina beat France on penalties after a 3-3 draw that turned into an instant myth for both countries.
Argentina, champions of the world!
For Argentina, this game became the sacred culmination of Lionel Messi's career and a national catharsis after decades of near misses. For France, it was a stolen dynasty moment, with Kylian Mbappe producing a historic hat-trick, yet still leaving as a defeated hero, which embedded a sense of injustice and unfinished business. Because the match was defined by extreme swings, Argentina's apparent control, France's late comeback, the penalty shootout, each side walked away with a different emotional script. Argentines saw confirmation of resilience and destiny, while the French saw a chaotic loss shaped as much by psychology and marginal moments as by footballing quality. At an individual level, the final forged and in some cases hardened identities. Emiliano Martinez as the confrontational, mentally aggressive goalkeeper, Mbappe as the unstoppable big-game scorer, and Messi as the calm center of a storm shaped by teammates willing to play the villain on his behalf. This identity, contrast matters for the rivalry because later flashpoints, celebrations, taunts, and political comments get interpreted through that lens. Argentina as proud, defiant underdogs who will not moderate their behavior for European sensibilities, and France as a defending champion expecting a certain standard of respect, especially for its star players and its national symbols. The penalty shootout itself added another layer, since Martinez's gamesmanship, delaying kicks, talking to opponents, and celebrating saves, became a core grievance in French discourse, turning what could have remained a classic sporting defeat into the starting point of a moral argument about respect, arrogance, and acceptable behavior on the biggest stage. The first escalation after Lusail came from the way Argentina's players, and especially Emiliano Martinez, chose to celebrate the win, turning normal locker room joy into targeted mockery of France and Kylian Mbappe by name. In the dressing room, Martinez called for a minute of silence for Mbappe, framing the French star as a defeated antagonist rather than just an opponent, which signaled that parts of the Argentine squad were fixating on one individual as the symbol of France's failure. That fixation resurfaced days later, during the victory parade in Buenos Aires, where Martinez was photographed carrying a baby doll with Mbappe's face taped onto it. A visual gag that many French observers interpreted as humiliating and vindictive rather than just part of noisy title celebrations. This behavior did not happen in a vacuum, because Martinez had already clashed with Mbappe at the level of ideas by reacting publicly to the French forward's earlier remarks that South American football was less competitive than Europe, claiming Mbappe doesn't know enough about football. That prior disagreement meant his later mocking looked less like spontaneous joking and more like a deliberate personal campaign, which hardened French perceptions that Argentina's celebrations were driven by resentment toward European, and especially French, football prestige. For many in France, the combination of explicit taunts, the baby doll incident, and Martinez's reputation for psychological games redefined him from a provocative competitor into a recurring antagonist of French football, making it easier to frame the entire Argentine camp as disrespectful rather than simply exuberant. On Mbappe's side, the public response was controlled, but cold, and that tone helped lock in the rivalry framework instead of diffusing it. When asked about Martinez's antics, Mbappe repeatedly dismissed them as not my problem and trivial things, emphasizing that he would not waste energy on celebrations and that his focus was returning to club football and performing for Paris Saint-Germain. This refusal to show anger in public did two things at once. It preserved Mbappe's image as a professional and good sport, but it also allowed French media and fans to carry the outrage for him, turning Martinez's behavior into a national insult in French discourse while Mbappe himself stayed above the fray. Within France, the reaction from figures around the national team cemented the idea that Argentina had crossed an ethical line, rather than just celebrated in a different cultural style. Coach Didier Deschamps condemned the excessive and shocking elements of Argentina's celebrations, explicitly mentioning the mockery aimed at Mbappe as something he found unacceptable. And Aston Villa manager Unai Emery publicly stated he would speak to Martinez about his conduct, signaling disapproval at club level too. These formal criticisms elevated the controversy from a fan argument to an institutional complaint, and they were widely covered in French outlets as evidence that Argentina had disrespected not only a player, but the French national team and its status as a top football nation. France's response to Argentina's celebrations went beyond fan anger, as high-profile figures within French football publicly framed the behavior as a breach of sporting decency, giving the conflict official weight. Didier Deschamps, France's national team coach, called out the excessive taunts aimed at Mbappe during Argentina's victory parade, describing them as shocking and unnecessary, which positioned the issue as a matter of respect for opponents rather than mere post-match banter. This criticism from Deschamps carried extra authority because he had just managed France to the final, and his comments signaled that the French football establishment viewed Martinez's actions as crossing into personal disrespect against a player seen as France's future. French media amplified these statements into a broader narrative of Argentine arrogance, often tying the celebrations to a supposed cultural gap between South American passion and European restraint. Outlets like L'Equipe and RMC ran stories highlighting the baby doll incident and Martinez's minute of silence as emblematic of poor sportsmanship, with pundits arguing that such antics undermined the World Cup's prestige and disrespected Mbappe's historic hat-trick performance. This coverage created a feedback loop where initial player actions became a national story, encouraging French fans to see Argentina not as worthy champions, but as rivals who needed to be put in their place. Club-level voices added to the pressure on Martinez, as Aston Villa manager Unai Emery, a Spaniard with ties to European football norms, announced he would address the goalkeeper's conduct directly, implying that the behavior hurt his professional image. Emery's intervention mattered because Martinez played in the Premier League, a league sensitive to global perceptions, and it showed how the World Cup feud was starting to affect player reputations outside international football. Meanwhile, even political figures like Emmanuel Macron weighed in indirectly by congratulating Messi while avoiding direct comment on the taunts, which French media interpreted as restrained diplomacy amid growing bilateral tension. These layered reactions, from coach, media, and club, transformed individual provocations into a collective French grievance, setting the stage for accusations of disrespect to become a recurring theme in future encounters. The feud reignited in July 2024 after Argentina's Copa America final win over Colombia, when midfielder Enzo Fernandez live-streamed a bus celebration video, capturing teammates singing a chant that mocked French players of African descent as not truly French. The lyrics explicitly targeted players like Kylian Mbappe, Eduardo Camavinga, and Wesley Fofana, stating they play for France, but they're all from Angola. Their mothers are Nigerian, their fathers are Cameroonian, but their passports say French, framing national identity through ethnicity in a way that French authorities labeled discriminatory and racist. This chant, which had circulated informally since the 2022 World Cup final, escalated into a formal scandal because Fernandez's video provided visual evidence of national team players participating, prompting immediate backlash from the French Football Federation, Chelsea, Fernandez's club, and FIFA. France responded institutionally, with the FFVF filing a complaint to FIFA condemning the unacceptable and discriminatory remarks against its players, while French media portrayed the incident as evidence of deeper prejudice in Argentine football culture toward black athletes representing European nations. Players like Fofana shared racist abuse received in response, and French officials tied it to a pattern of Argentine behavior seen as xenophobic, especially given prior taunts post-World Cup, turning the chant into a symbol of systemic prejudice against France's multicultural squad. Fernandez apologized on social media, calling the language highly offensive and admitting he got caught up in the euphoria. But this did little to quell French outrage, as the video showed widespread participation among Argentina's champions. Argentina defended the chant as non-racist banter rooted in football rivalry, with Vice President Victoria Villarruel accusing France of hypocrisy and the Argentine government downplaying it as cultural misunderstanding, while Fernandez and Martinez later insisted it targeted nationality, not race. Emiliano Martinez explicitly backed Fernandez in November 2024, stating, "Enzo is a lovely guy. He's been called racist when he's not." and accused France of overreacting while defending Argentine celebrations as passionate, not hateful. This pushback framed French criticism as politically motivated exaggeration, deepening the divide over what constitutes prejudice versus rivalry trash talk. The chant scandal carried straight into the 2024 Paris Olympics men's soccer quarterfinal between Argentina and France on August 2nd in Bordeaux, where pre-existing bad blood created a powder keg atmosphere from kickoff. Argentina faced hostile boos during their national anthem and throughout the match, played on French soil amid the racism controversy, with French players admitting the video fueled their motivation and led to deliberate provocations on the field. France won 1-0 via Jean-Philippe Mataita's early header, a result that French captain Alexandre Lacazette described as a win on and off the field, explicitly linking the victory to settling scores from the chants. Tensions exploded immediately after the final whistle, as players from both sides shoved and brawled for minutes before officials intervened, with some French players briefly retreating to the tunnel before returning for a lap of honor right in front of Argentina's bench. Argentine captain Nicolas Otamendi called the French celebrations disappointing and lacking humility, especially in front of Argentine families in the stands, while goalkeeper Geronimo Rulli accused France of not knowing how to win gracefully and venting pent-up emotions. French midfielder Enzo Milot admitted to taunting Argentina's bench intentionally as payback for the video, confirming the match was psychologically charged beyond normal competition. This post-match chaos marked the first direct on-pitch clash between the nations since 2022, turning abstract media and social media feuds into physical confrontation and reinforcing the pattern of escalating from words to actions. Coach Thierry Henry condemned his own team's behavior as unacceptable, highlighting how the rivalry's intensity risked undermining the Olympic spirit. The Fernandez chant scandal drew Presidents Javier Milei of Argentina and Emmanuel Macron of France into the fray in late July 2024, elevating the football dispute to a bilateral diplomatic issue. Milei, a vocal nationalist, refused to attend Argentina's Copa America victory parade in protest against the chant and publicly defended his team's behavior as popular humor, rather than racism, accusing French critics of hypocrisy amid Europe's own issues with discrimination. This stance prompted Macron to reiterate condemnation of the racist and discriminatory remarks during an official statement, while French diplomats pushed FIFA for sanctions, framing the incident as an attack on France's multicultural identity. Milei's scheduled Paris visit on July 25th, timed for Olympic events and IMF talks, became a flashpoint, with him arriving amid French media coverage of the controversy and using the trip to indirectly push back by praising Argentina's football achievements without apology. Argentine officials downplayed the rift during the Macron-Milei meeting, calling discussions frank on bilateral ties, including soccer tensions, but the exchange highlighted how football had become proxy for larger geopolitical frictions like economic aid and cultural perceptions. Macron's government maintained pressure through FIFA channels, while Milei's rhetoric positioned France as an oversensitive imperial power, meddling in Argentine sovereignty. This presidential involvement marked a shift from player-led animosity to state-level standoff, so with Milei's absence from later football events like the 2025 World Cup draw, signaling ongoing chill in relations tied to the soccer feud. Club-level teammates like Enzo Fernandez and Moisés Caicedo at Chelsea faced awkward dynamics. Post-chant, as French players like Fofana distanced themselves, showing how national rivalries infiltrated daily professional interactions. The national rivalry has seeped into club football, creating strained dynamics between Argentine and French players who share locker rooms, turning everyday interactions into extensions of the feud. After the Fernandez chant video, Chelsea's French defenders Wesley Fofana, Axel Disasi, and Malo Gusto unfollowed Enzo Fernandez on social media, with Fofana publicly labeling it uninhibited racism, and Koundé at Barcelona reacting with disgust emojis to call it dreadful, signaling fractured trust among elite teammates. Fernandez faced internal Chelsea investigation and apologized, but the incident highlighted how national bad blood disrupts club harmony, as French players distance themselves from the Argentine despite professional obligations. Emiliano Martinez has kept the antagonism alive at club level, notably in April 2025 before Aston Villa's Champions League tie against PSG, where he mocked France over their 2022 World Cup loss, arriving in Paris wearing Argentina gear and provoking boos from Parc des Princes fans. French media described Martinez experiencing hell during the match, conceding 3 goals amid relentless insults, while PSG supporters targeted him with chants, showing how his provocations draw personal hostility from French crowds and players alike. Aston Villa manager Unai Emery urged Martinez to focus on football and control emotions, acknowledging the goalkeeper's role in perpetuating the cross-channel tension. These club incidents, social media snubs, pre-match taunts, hostile receptions, demonstrate tactical resentment spilling over as players like Martinez use mind games against French opponents, mirroring the psychological warfare from national clashes. The rivalry shows no signs of cooling as Argentina and France are drawn together in Group B for the 2026 World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada, setting up a rematch of the 2022 final 3.5 years later. This group stage clash, confirmed in December 2025, revives the core matchup of Messi, if he plays, versus Mbappe, but now with layers of accumulated grievances making it far more charged than a standard opener. French defender William Saliba stated in October 2025 that France do not fear Argentina, signaling confidence amid the history, while Argentine outlets frame it as unfinished business from Lusail. Beyond 2026, the generational angle emerges through young stars. France's Mbappe, 27 in 2026, Camavinga, and Saliba, versus Argentina's emerging talents like Giuliano Simeone and Claudio Echeverri, ensuring the bitterness outlives veterans like Messi. Club ties like Fernandes at Chelsea with French teammates, or Martinez's ongoing PSG clashes, will keep interpersonal resentment simmering, while political echoes from Macron persist. FIFA investigations into past incidents like the chant remain unresolved as of early 2026, adding administrative friction to future encounters. This setup transforms sporadic clashes into a sustained cycle, where each match risks reigniting taunts, brawls, or diplomatic spats, cementing Argentina-France as soccer's newest bitter feud.